The sun dipped low behind the wide Texas hills, painting the sky in soft orange and dusty gold. Caleb Turner, a quiet and hard-working cowboy, stood outside his barn with a brush in his hand, grooming his old horse. Rusty, his ranch spread across miles of open land fences. Grazing fields, a small cabin, and the barn that held everything he owned. Life out here was peaceful, simple, and predictable. Caleb liked it that way. He didn't expect anything to change. He didn't want anything to change. But life had its own plans. As he wiped sweat from his brow, he noticed a wagon approaching from the dirt road, kicking up a trail of dust behind it. He squinted. Visitors were rare out here. He set the brush aside and stepped forward. The wagon slowed to a stop a few feet from him, and an older man jumped off, tipping his hat politely. "You Caleb Turner?" the man asked. "Yes, sir," Caleb replied calmly. "Well," the man said, jerking his thumb toward the wagon, "I got a delivery for you." "Came all the way from the agency in the next town over?" Caleb frowned. "Delivery? I didn't order anything." The man chuckled lightly. "Not a thing. Not an item, I mean." He stepped aside, and that was when Caleb saw her. A young woman, small and quiet, sat inside the wagon, clutching a single worn-out bag to her chest. She had long, dark hair braided loosely, and her eyes were lowered, as if she was afraid to meet anyone's gaze. Caleb blinked in surprise. A woman? Why was she here? The older man cleared his throat. "Name's Lydia," he said. "She's the one the agency matched you with. Mail-order bride arrangement. Says here, you're the groom." Caleb felt like someone had kicked dust into his eyes. He hadn't signed any marriage paperwork, not recently. He hadn't asked for a wife. He liked solitude. He liked the quiet. "I think you got the wrong ranch," he said firmly. "No mistake," the man insisted. "Your neighbors sent the request on your behalf. They thought you needed some company. Said you've been alone too long." Caleb's jaw tightened slightly. He had good neighbors, but sometimes they interfered too much. He would deal with them later, but right now. There was a young woman sitting in the wagon. Looking as lost as a bird blown off course, she hugged her small bag tighter, eyes still lowered, waiting silently for some sort of direction. Caleb took a slow breath. Whatever the mix-up was, the girl didn't deserve to feel unwanted. He stepped forward gently. "Ma'am," he said softly, "my name is Caleb. I think there's been a misunderstanding, but you're welcome to rest here for the night. We'll figure things out in the morning." Lydia nodded, without lifting her head. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was fragile. Like a leaf trembling in the wind, the older man tipped his hat, climbed back onto his wagon, and rode away. The dust settled behind him until he disappeared into the distance. Caleb stood there awkwardly, unsure of what to say next. "Let me help you down," he offered. Lydia hesitated but slowly extended her hand. Caleb held it gently as she stepped off the wagon. Her hand was cold, small, and shaking slightly. She pulled it back quickly once her feet touched the ground. "I'll show you the cabin," he said quietly. She followed him slowly, almost like she was afraid each step might be the wrong one. When they reached the porch, Caleb opened the door and stepped aside. "Please," he said. She entered, eyes flickering around the cabin. It was simple wooden walls, a fireplace, a table with 2 chairs, and a bed in the corner. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm, safe, and clean. Caleb placed his hat on the table. "You can sit if you want." Lydia nodded and sat on the edge of the chair, her hands twisting nervously around the handles of her bag. She kept her head bowed the whole time. Caleb could sense she was shyly shy, like someone who had been through something heavy. "I'm going to make some tea," he said, wanting her to feel welcome. "Would you like some?" "Yes." "Please," she whispered. Her voice held a hint of gratitude, but also fear. As Caleb heated water over the fire, he glanced at her from time to time. She didn't look around the cabin. She didn't explore or relax. She sat small and still, as if she didn't want to take up space. When the tea was ready, he placed a cup in front of her. She murmured thanks and took a careful sip. "You traveled far?" Caleb asked gently. She nodded. 2 days, that's quite a journey. She swallowed hard. I didn't have a choice. Caleb felt a knot tighten in his chest. Her words were quiet, but heavy. You're safe here, he said softly. Nobody will trouble you. She looked up for a second, just one, and he noticed her eyes were tired, red around the edges, filled with something that wasn't fear alone, but sadness. Great sadness. Then she looked down again. I appreciate your kindness, she murmured. Caleb didn't press her. He could tell she was holding back something, perhaps many things. After she finished her tea, she looked around timidly. This place. It's peaceful, she said. It is, Caleb replied. I built most of it myself. You live alone? She asked quietly. Yes, for a long time. She nodded as if that made sense. Maybe she felt safer knowing he wasn't used to noise or crowds either. He placed another log on the fire. You can take the bed for tonight. I'll sleep out here by the fire or in the barn. Her head rose slightly and panic flashed across her face. No, you don't have to do that. I can sit by the fire. I don't want to trouble you. You're not troubling me, Caleb said gently. You're my guest. The bed is yours. I can't, she whispered, clutching her bag tighter. He paused. She wasn't being stubborn, she was scared. Something about sleeping in a strange place disturbed her deeply. Caleb pulled a blanket from the shelf and placed it near the fireplace. Then you can sit here, he said softly. Wherever you feel safe. Her shoulders relaxed, just a little. Thank you. As night settled fully, the room filled with warm firelight. Caleb took a seat on the wooden chair near the table and wiped down his tools to keep his hands occupied. Lydia stayed by the fire. Her face turned toward the flames. She took slow breaths, deep, careful, and shaky. Caleb watched quietly. She didn't tremble from cold. She trembled from memory. When the fire flickered too loudly, she flinched. When the window creaked from wind, her shoulders tightened. Caleb realized she was listening to every sound with alert fear, as if expecting something bad to happen. He spoke softly, so he wouldn't startle her. If there's anything you want to talk about, I'm here. She didn't answer at first. Only after a long moment did she whisper, I'm not used to being somewhere new. That's understandable. She closed her eyes, battled something inside, then spoke again. I lost my family. I didn't think I'd ever have a place to rest again. Caleb stayed silent, respecting her pace. It's been a hard year, she said carefully. A very hard one. I'm sorry, Caleb replied gently. You've clearly been through a lot. Her voice grew even quieter. I thought coming here would be simple, just a new start, but I'm frightened of the nights. She stopped herself, as if she had said too much. Caleb didn't ask questions. He didn't push. He just said, You're safe here. That's the only thing you need to remember tonight. Lydia slowly nodded. Hours passed. She didn't sleep. She sat awake, hugging her knees, staring at the fire like it was her only protection. Caleb remained nearby, keeping the fire alive and the room calm. Every now and then, Lydia's eyes closed from exhaustion, but she forced them open again. It wasn't stubbornness, it was fear of dreaming. Fear of memories. Caleb understood more than she said. Finally, near midnight, Lydia whispered, I'm sorry if I'm difficult. You're not, he said steadily. You're trying your best. That's enough. Her eyes softened. She took a long breath and wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Outside, the night grew colder. Inside, the fire glowed warm, and Caleb understood that whatever her secret was, whatever had shaken her so deeply, it would reveal itself in its own time. For now, she just needed space, safety, and someone who didn't rush her. Caleb decided he would stay awake as long as she needed. She didn't know it yet, but he had already made up his mind. She would not face this night alone. The fire crackled gently in the small cabin, spreading a warm orange glow across the wooden walls. Caleb sat on a chair near the table, sharpening a small tool just to keep his hands busy. He did not want Lydia to feel watched, but he also did not want to leave her alone. She sat close to the fireplace, hugging her knees, her eyes fixed on the flames as if they were the only safe thing in the room. The ranch outside was quiet. Only the wind moved through the grass, brushing against the walls like a soft whisper. Caleb's horses were already asleep in the barn, and the world felt peaceful yet inside the cabin. There was a tension he could sense in every breath Lydia took. Caleb had never met someone so shy, so careful, so guarded. He had seen strong storms, wild cattle, and silent nights on the plains. But he knew this kind of quietness came from pain, not calmness. He wanted to help, but did not know how to reach her without.
Ow.
Stepping on the fragile ground she stood on, Lydia kept her head down most of the time. She barely spoke more than a word or two. Even when she thanked him earlier for the dinner, her voice was so soft that he almost missed it. The cowboy knew forcing her to talk would only make things worse, so he stayed patient. After several minutes, the tool slipped from his hands and clattered lightly onto the table. Lydia flinched at the sound, as if it were something far louder or dangerous than it really was. Caleb froze. "I'm sorry," he said gently. "Didn't mean to make noise." She shook her head, but her shoulders tightened. It wasn't the noise itself. It was something deeper. Caleb saw fear in her reaction, not surprise. He leaned back in his chair and kept his tone steady. "You don't have to be afraid here. Nothing's going to hurt you tonight. I promise." She swallowed slowly, but still did not answer. The minutes passed quietly again. Outside, the night grew colder, and a thin wind pressed against the windows. Lydia pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Caleb stood up slowly, making sure his movements were gentle, and placed another log on the fire. "You can take the bed if you want," he offered for the second time that night. "I'll sleep out here." She shook her head again, and this time her voice trembled slightly. No, I'm fine here." Caleb didn't push. He nodded and returned to his chair. The fire glowed brighter, and its warmth filled the room, but Lydia still looked cold. Not cold from temperature, but from memories she carried inside. Caleb finally spoke softly. "Lydia, if you ever want to tell me something, I will listen. Only if you want. You don't have to answer anything you don't want to." Her eyes remained on the fire. But he noticed her fingers tightening around the blanket. "I know strangers can be frightening," he added. "And this place is new for you." She blinked slowly, and for the first time since arriving, she whispered, "Everything is new. Everything." Caleb kept quiet. Letting her speak at her own pace, she took a shaky breath. "I didn't expect to leave my old home so soon. I thought I had more time." Caleb waited respectfully. "My little brother was sick," she said, her voice frail but steady. "I spent months taking care of him. I didn't leave his side, but—" She hesitated, her eyes glistening. "He didn't make it." Caleb felt his chest tighten. "I'm sorry," he whispered, sincere and slow. Lydia nodded, wiping the corner of her eye. "After he passed, there was nothing left for me there. No family, no home, no reason to stay." Caleb's voice remained calm. "You did what you could. You don't have to explain more unless you want to." For a long moment, Lydia stared into the flames again. Then she whispered, "I came here because I didn't know where else to go. I thought maybe starting fresh would help me forget." She paused as a faint wind rattled the windows. "But forgetting is not the same as healing," Caleb said softly. Her eyes flickered toward him for the briefest second, her expression full of exhaustion. Another long silence settled between them, but something had changed. Her shoulders had softened a little, and her breaths grew steadier. Caleb didn't expect her to talk more, but she surprised him. "When I sleep," she whispered, "I see things. Hear things. My brother calling for me. His weak breathing. The last moments." She shivered. "I try to sleep sitting up because if I lie down, the dreams get worse." Caleb listened with the same patience he used when calming a wild horse with kindness. Steady presence and no sudden movements. "That's why you didn't want the bed," he said gently. She nodded. "I didn't want to wake up in a strange place and panic. I didn't want to trouble you." "You are not troubling me," he said instantly. "If sitting by the fire feels safer, then that's what we'll do." Lydia stared at him, surprised by the simple kindness in his voice. Caleb continued quietly, "You've had a hard time." Anyone can see that. But you're safe here. No one will force you to do anything you're not ready for. Her eyes softened, just a little. You're kind, she said in a barely audible voice. It's nothing, he replied. It's just respect. Lydia lowered her head. I thought you would be angry if I didn't follow the usual way. I thought I might disappoint you. Caleb almost smiled, but gently. Lydia, I am not expecting anything from you. I don't know who put those thoughts in your mind, but I'm not that kind of man. You're free to take your time. Fire crackled again. A small sigh escaped her lips. It wasn't from fire, it was from relief. The kind of breath someone lets out after holding it too long. For the first time since she had entered the cabin, Lydia's posture eased. Caleb noticed her eyes growing heavy as sleep crept closer. But he also saw her struggle to stay awake. Her fear of dreams was stronger than her exhaustion. You can sleep, he said softly. I'll be right here. I won't leave. She hesitated. You will. Stay awake. If that makes you feel safe, yes. Her lips trembled. I don't want to be a burden. You're not, Caleb said simply. You're a guest in my home. That's all that matters right now. Slowly, very slowly. Lydia nodded. She leaned back against the wall beside the fire, wrapping the blanket around herself. The warmth finally reached her cold fingers. Her breathing became steadier, more even, and her eyes closed softly. Caleb watched quietly. He didn't stare, he simply made sure she was comfortable. He placed another log on the fire so it would burn until morning. He moved lightly, almost silently, to avoid disturbing her. Minutes stretched into an hour. The fire flickered gently. Lydia's breathing remained calm, but then her body tensed, as if a distant memory had touched her. Caleb immediately reached for another blanket, gently draping it over her shoulders. When he did, she relaxed again. Her rest that night wasn't perfect. A few times she twitched lightly, as if remembering something painful. But each time, the warmth of the fire and Caleb's presence seemed to help her. Stay calm. Caleb did not sleep at all. He kept his promise. By the time the first light of dawn touched the edge of the sky, Lydia stirred. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking at the golden light that spilled through the small window. For a moment, she looked confused. Then she saw Caleb. He was still in the chair, upright, awake, and calm. His hat rested on the table, and his face carried a tired but gentle expression. You stayed, she whispered. I told you I would, he replied. His voice warm. She looked at the blankets around her, then at the glowing embers of the fire, then back at him. Her eyes grew glassy with emotion, gratitude, surprise, and a kind of relief she had not felt in a long time. I slept, she said softly, as if she didn't quite believe it. Yes, Caleb said. And you didn't wake up frightened. She lowered her gaze modestly. Thank you. I didn't think I could sleep at all. Not in a new place. Not after everything. You did well, he said simply. And today will be easier than yesterday. Lydia looked around the cabin again. In the warm morning light, the place no longer felt strange or frightening. It felt like a place where she could breathe. Maybe even a place where she could start again. Caleb didn't speak more. He didn't need to. His quiet presence was enough to tell her that she wasn't alone anymore. For the first time since she arrived, Lydia managed a very small but genuine smile. The night that had frightened her so deeply had ended not with fear, but with understanding, and dawn had brought something she didn't expect. Hope. The first soft light of morning touched the sky, spreading pale gold across the ranch. The night had been long and quiet, broken only by the gentle crackle of the fire and the steady breathing of Lydia as she slept near the warm hearth. Caleb had remained awake through all of it, resting on his chair, guarding the silence like a loyal sentry. When Lydia finally opened her eyes, she blinked slowly, letting the morning light settle on her face. For a moment, she looked confused, like she didn't know where she was. Then she saw the cabin, the fire, and Caleb sitting nearby, calm, awake, and still watching over her. Her expression shifted from fear to quiet disbelief. You did awake, she whispered, her voice dry from sleep. Caleb nodded, stretching his stiff shoulders. I said I would. Lydia sat up slowly, adjusting the blanket around her. Her eyes softened as she looked at him, the cowboy, who didn't owe her anything, yet gave her more patience than she ever expected. You didn't have to, murmured. I know, he replied gently. But I wanted to. You seemed like you needed someone close by. Her throat tightened. No one had watched over her like that since her brother's final days. She felt a wave of emotion she wasn't ready to name. Caleb stood and added fresh wood to the fire. Are you hungry? I can make breakfast. She nodded shyly. Yes. Please. He prepared a simple meal, scrambled eggs, warm bread, and tea. The smell filled the cabin. Mixing with the morning breeze that drifted through the window, Lydia watched him move around the small kitchen. He was quiet, careful, and gentle with everything he touched. She was beginning to understand the type of man he was. Not loud, not demanding, not impatient. Just steady. When he placed the plate in front of her, she murmured, Thank you. Caleb sat across from her with his own plate. They ate slowly. Lydia took small bites, still not fully relaxed, but clearly more comfortable than the night before. After a few minutes of silence, Caleb spoke softly. You actually slept. That's a good start. Lydia lowered her eyes. I didn't think I would. Not after everything that happened. You're stronger than you think, Caleb said gently. Her cheeks warmed slightly. I don't feel strong. Caleb shook his head. Weak people don't survive hard years. Weak people don't travel across towns alone. Weak people don't keep going when everything hurts you. You're stronger than you know. Lydia swallowed. She wasn't used to compliments, not real ones, not honest ones. After breakfast, Caleb stepped outside to check the animals. Lydia followed a few minutes later, standing by the porch with her blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. The morning sun warmed the land, turning the fields bright and comforting. Caleb noticed her watching him and walked over. You can come closer if you want. Rusty's friendly. She hesitated at first, but stepped down from the porch. She stopped a few feet from the horse, keeping her movements calm and slow. Rusty sniffed her hand gently. Lydia let out a small breath. He's gentle, just like someone else in this place, Caleb said. She looked up, surprised by his choice of words. But Caleb only smiled softly, not pushing for anything deeper. As they walked around the ranch, Lydia asked quiet questions about the land, the animals, the seasons. Her voice was still soft, but there was curiosity in it now. Caleb answered each question with patience and care. After a while, they returned to the cabin and sat on the porch steps. Lydia looked at the open land stretching before them. This place, she said slowly, it feels peaceful. Caleb nodded. That's what I like about it. Lydia took a long breath, letting the calm morning air fill her lungs. Then she turned to Caleb, gathering courage. I need to tell you something else, she whispered. Caleb didn't move, but his attention sharpened. Go ahead, I'm listening. She placed her hands on her lap, twisting her fingers nervously. When the agency sent me, they didn't know everything about me. I didn't tell them the full truth. Caleb's voice stayed gentle. Take your time. Lydia stared at the ground for a moment, trying to steady her breath. After my brother passed, she began softly, I lost everything. My home, my purpose, my sense of where I belonged. I didn't want to be around people, because every face reminded me of someone I couldn't save. Caleb waited quietly. I didn't want to marry anyone, she continued. I wasn't ready for that. I just wanted somewhere to rest, somewhere I could breathe without remembering every moment. Her voice trembled. Gwa, but the agency only sends women to places where they're wanted by men. So I agreed. I thought maybe the man they sent me to would be kind, or at least patient. Caleb understood now why she was so afraid. She had come here hoping for safety, but expecting disappointment. You thought I'd be upset? He said softly. Or force you to be something you're not ready to be? Lydia nodded. I didn't know what kind of person you were. When I arrived, I thought maybe you would send me back, or be angry, or expect something from me. Caleb shook his head gently. Lydia, I won't force anything, not now, not ever. Her eyes shimmered with emotion. I'm sorry I came here with so much fear, she whispered. You came here with honesty, he corrected. and with pain that anyone would feel in your place. You don't owe me an apology. She looked up at him, and for the first time, she held his gaze without looking away immediately. Thank you, she whispered. The wind brushed lightly through her hair. Caleb watched her carefully. Her expression was no longer just fur, it was trust, forming slowly like a fragile blossom in spring. After a long moment, Lydia spoke again. I want to help here, if you'll let me. I can cook, sew, clean. I want to be useful. I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden, Caleb repeated firmly. But if helping makes you feel better, I'd welcome it. She nodded, comforted by his tone. For the rest of the morning, they worked side by side, Caleb repairing a fence, Lydia brushing the horses and sweeping the porch. She moved carefully, still uncertain, but she tried. And every small step she took filled Caleb with quiet admiration. By noon, the sun was high, and they shared a light lunch. Lydia felt less like a stranger now, and Caleb noticed she smiled a little more often, even if the smiles were small. Later, Lydia stood by the window, looking out at the ranch with a thoughtful expression. Caleb, she said softly, last night, I was scared of sleeping, afraid of dreams and memories. But when I opened my eyes this morning and saw you still there. She paused, her voice thick with emotion. It was the first time in months that I felt safe. Caleb felt warmth spread through him at her words. I'm glad, he said quietly. She turned toward him, her eyes clear and steady. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'm ready to be a wife or even ready for a new family. But I am ready to try. Maybe slowly. Maybe one day at a time. Caleb nodded. That's all I ask. For the first time, she smiled genuinely soft, warm, filled with hope instead of fear. Then I think this place might become my home, she whispered. Caleb felt something shift inside him, a gentle promise. Not spoken, but understood. That night, Lydia chose on her own to sleep on the bed. She asked Caleb if he could sit nearby until she fell asleep. He did, and she drifted off peacefully, without trembling, without fear. She wasn't healed yet, but she was healing, and that made all the difference. In the quiet ranch cabin, under the soft glow of the fire, a shy bride and a patient cowboy began building something simple and strong, a new beginning.